All right, welcome. So we are at a transition point in the text. At this point, we're going to transition from that stability of the mind, the concentration piece, mental stability, focusing the mind, the way His Holiness put it, to wisdom. So once again, for those of you who might be new, we've been going through this very precious text by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, How to Practice, which is really the Four Noble Truths, and in His Holiness's words to a Westerner, how to put the Four Noble Truths into practice. So we've already covered some preliminary work. We went ahead and went through this process of understanding the source of suffering and the source of happiness, how they're directly tied to our virtuous and non-virtuous behaviors. He uses the word our morality, so cultivating this morality within us. And then we went to this mental stability. So we're wrapping that piece up now. And the context here is that the Noble Eightfold path is made up of three higher trainings, which is the morality, the mental stability, and the wisdom. This is the path of awakening. And in this, we also included the different types of motivations with which we might engage in this path. And the invitation was to, if the inclination is there for you, to cultivate a bodhisattva path, this intention to engage in this path, not merely for my own liberation, but for the liberation of all sentient beings. So we can engage at various levels, all the way from not wanting to suffer in this lifetime to complete liberation, complete Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. So went through the different types of motivations we might engage with these teachings, and they would have benefit at all those levels. And then the practice of shamatha, calm abiding, stabilizing the mind, focusing the mind, training the mind. And so we're just wrapping that piece up, and then we'll probably get right into the wisdom piece. And just want to remind you, if you have questions at any point, you can raise your hand. There's a little button there to raise your hand, or you could type into the question and answer. There's a little Q&A, and I'll see that pop up. But if you raise your hand, I'll be able to invite you to turn your microphone on. Okay. So I'm going to pull up the text here right where we left off. Such a gift to be able to just go through this. Here we are, teachings by His Holiness. Pop them online. Amazes me. So just backing up, we talked about some different types of meditations, and as far as some different benefits, but we really focused on shamatha as that primary meditation to stabilize the mind, to cultivate this stability of mind, to be able to focus the mind. But as we touched on right here at the end of this section, is only said, well, sometimes there's, we're a little bit worked up, and focusing the mind is difficult. And so he offered some other methods, and last week we kind of tapped into these pieces here where we can bring more of an analytical meditation to mind, or an analytical view or perspective. And so we covered this, consider trouble from this broader perspective. And then the second point here, I'm trying to remember if we got to it. Let me read it and we'll see. When you are jealous or wish harm on an enemy, instead of stewing over that person's bad qualities, reflect on his or her attributes. Most people are a mixture of good and bad qualities. It's hard to find anyone who is all bad, who is bad in all respects. So again, these were invitations to apply some of these skills when our minds, caught up, angry, or in this case, jealous, and what can I do about that? And can I catch myself in the midst of labeling like a bad person, and instead of having some ill will, can I really understand that they're a lot like me, right? They're a mixture. I've done some things that are helpful, some things that are not helpful at all. I've hurt people, let people down, and I've also helped people, and that there's no stagnant person who's just stuck in a particular way, and that they're all this way or they're all that way. So a really good tool, and be able to bear that in mind. And person I'm upset with right now, or jealous, or wanting some ill will is not who they are. It's just how they're showing up in this particular moment, this brief moment of their life. Much like I've shown up in brief moments of my life to be all kind and loving, and other times angry and resentful. That's none of that stayed. It was just the moment I'm showing up due to causes and conditions, the environment that was going on, my preconditioning, and so forth. And we're going to unpack this much more as we get into the wisdom piece. But just wanted to offer a couple of these opportunities here. Just putting a little tool in your back pocket. And then reflect on the emptiness of inherent existence. This is the deepest analytical meditation, something I will explore in the next 3 chapters. So that's really where we're going. I won't elaborate too much on that. And then he also said, it's interesting because, maybe my mind can't focus. Maybe I'm angry. Maybe I'm jealous. There's stuff going on. Maybe I can bring a greater perspective and kind of ease it a little bit. But if not, I can always go back to stabilizing meditation. So if you cannot stop worrying over something in the past or what might happen in the future, just shift your focus to the inhalation and exhalation of your breath, right? So I can come right back to this practice. And it's pretty straightforward, because if I'm actually focused on my breath, I'm not focusing on ill will and anger and resentment. I'm just come here and things can settle down. It gives another option. We could recite the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. Since the mind cannot concentrate on 2 things simultaneously, either of these meditations causes the former worry to fade. So if I'm focusing on Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, that's going to be something that really settles the mind and take me away from the anger or whatever's going on, as well as either that or the breath. So these are some of these tools His Holiness offered. It seems to me that all religions could benefit from Buddhist meditation techniques. Single-minded concentration can be applied usefully in many situations. In all walks of life, we can benefit from focusing the mind and increasing memory. So that was just a nice little wrap-up of the section on focusing the mind. And there's some summary that just a review of a meditation that we could do. So I'll just pause there before we crack the door on the ultimate nature of reality. Just check in, see if anyone had any questions from the previous teaching, any thoughts around meditation, any clarity that needs to be provided. So I'll just pause here for a moment in case anyone has a question. You can raise your hand, give me a chance to take a sip of water. Okay, it looks like we're ready to crack the door on wisdom. So here we get to get right into the root of the problem. Again, we talked about that last week. The very root of this mental and emotional stuff, this very root of samsara, at its core is a misperception. The path of liberation is all conducive for one thing: to accurately recognize the nature of our experience of ourselves and phenomena, and that all of samsara is a result of a misperception. So the wheel of samsara, the way we crack that open, is to see accurately. It's born of misperception, of ignorance. Ignorance, people are getting away from using that word. Really, I think misperception's a nicer, more full, accurate word. Misperception. Things appear deceptively. And out of that, I rise as seeing myself in a particular way and you in a particular way, and so forth. And then the wheel of elaborations, labels, and all that create this experience I'm having. And so ethics, the morality, the training of the mind, these are going to be pieces that we can put together. The conditions of virtue, morality, allow for the conditions to ripen for wisdom, the training of the mind, the ability to observe, to be mindful, to apply the mind. And now we're going to apply that to trying to experience ourselves as we truly are, and the world as it is. So we'll crack that door on, let me back up here. Practicing wisdom. And so here we begin with entry point, examining how beings and things exist. And before we enter into this realm, it's very important to understand that people and things exist. They just don't exist in the way that we experience them. They appear deceptively. So this entry point into understanding the nature of our experience is to start to recognize how things appear to exist in a way that they don't. But it doesn't mean they don't exist. And so this is a key point. It's something we really have to hammer home a lot, because one of the misperceptions and dangers of unpacking the nature of our experience is, people come to the idea, well, nothing exists, nothing matters, which is just, not only it's just wrong in the sense of, not going to get you anywhere, but it's also harmful, because then we could start to think nothing matters, and then our ethics and our behavior doesn't seem to matter, and people can lose a real connection to this incredible opportunity of their experience. So we really want to avoid that. And then, we're already at this other extreme, which is things really exist in a very concrete way in the way I observe them. So these two extremes. And so we talk about the middle path. The middle path is one that's not caught up in the extreme of nihilism, that, none of this really, exists, and that everything exists in this very concrete way. Middle path is understanding the way things actually exist, and not that they don't exist, but how do they exist. And so that's the title here, very skillfully put: examining how beings and things exist, which is so much more helpful than saying examining emptiness or so forth. It's, let's look at how things exist. And so all of Buddhism is focused on this, and what's accurate, what's true. And so the invitation is start to explore this. Okay, a little prelude, and let's get our feet wet. So an overview of wisdom and spiritual practice. It's just the overview, and it'll get unpacked. To generate the type of love and compassion that motivates you to seek Buddhahood, not for yourself, but for the sake of others, first you must confront suffering by identifying its types. This is the first noble truth. All right, so we looked at that. From the time we are born to the time that we die, we suffer mental and physical pain, suffering of change, and pervasive suffering of uncontrolled conditioning. Those are 3 types of suffering. Right? The actual mental and emotional, or mental and physical pain, suffering of change, and then this pervasive suffering of uncontrolled conditioning. These afflictions we come in with in karma. The second and third noble truths lead us to understand the causes of suffering and whether or not those causes can be removed. So things don't happen without a cause. So the nature of our experience in samsara is imbued with these 3 sufferings. Its very nature, this uncontrolled conditioning, this karma and klesha, things changing. And then, we're going to age, we're going to get sick, we're going to die, we're going to have mental and emotional suffering as well. That's the nature of this. And then, well, what's the cause? And then once I identify the cause, can it be removed? So, second noble truth is the cause. Right? Truth of suffering, cause of suffering. Third is cessation of suffering. That you can remove the result if you remove the cause. So we've done that. We've had these practices. We started this a while back. The fundamental cause for suffering, its core, is ignorance. Again, misperception. The mistaken apprehension that living beings and objects inherently exist. Inherently means that they exist independently from their own side, of their own accord. So it appears that way. Right? I'm looking at a bike right now. It looks like there's a bike. It's its own bike. It's very independent. It's its own thing. It exists. So it appears very inherently existent. This chapter will show that beings and objects, in fact, do not exist this way. So beings, others, and objects, well, they don't inherently exist. They look like it, but that's not how they exist. We all have a valid, proper sense of self, or I. But then we additionally have a misconception of that I as inherently existing. Under the sway of this delusion, we view the self as existing under its own power, established by way of its own nature, able to set itself up. This sense of inherent existence can even be so strong that the self feels independent from mind and body. For instance, if you are weak from sickness, you might feel that you could switch bodies with someone who is stronger. It's interesting. I'm not sure I understand that. Similarly, when your mind is dull, you might feel that you could switch your mind with someone else's sharp mind. So I think what he's saying here is, when my body's weak, I may visualize my body being stronger than it is, and I can just switch. and go, no, I can do this. And that my mind, I can switch. Not that I'm actually getting somebody else's mind. Yeah, that one's interesting. Let's see how he unpacks this further. However, if there were such a separate I, self-established and existing in its own right, it should become clearer and clearer under the light of competent analysis as to whether it exists as either mind or body, or the collection of mind and body, or different from mind and body. In fact, the closer you look, the more it is not found. This turns out to be the case for everything, for all phenomena. The fact that you cannot find them means that those phenomena do not exist under their own power. They are not self-established. I think I got clarity on the mind-body thing that he was sharing. We might look at, for example, my body's weak, and I see, someone who has a strong body. I think, well, I can have that kind of body. And so I'm going to, work out more, create that. My mind says, dull mind. Well, I can, see those who have a sharp mind and have their mind, that kind of thing. I think that would make sense with his analogy there. And then going on to this idea of looking closely upon myself, John. I'm going to find John. If I look for John, I'm going to find John. John's this body, or John's this mind, or John's the body and mind, or John is that which is observing the mind and body. But I'm going to find John, because if I exist, I should be clear. I can find John. I can analyze this. So this is the starting point too. That the more I look, it is not found, is what he said. The closer you look, the more it is not found. So the closer I look for John, John's going to be a little elusive. And the closer I look at the bike, I'm not going to find a bike. The closer I look at the microphone, I'm not going to find a microphone. And there's nothing particularly Buddhist about any of what we're sharing right now. It's just the way things are, the way things are not. And, physics and quantum physics and things of this nature, just reasoning, we'll find the same thing. That things appear deceptively. That we'll find. Things are either true or they're not. So things either exist intrinsically or they don't. And we can check. Sometime during the early 60s, when I was reflecting on a passage by Tsongkhapa about unfindability and the fact that phenomena are dependent upon conceptuality, having a concept of them, it was as if lightning coursed through my chest. Here is the passage. Right, so this is early 60s. His Holiness is in analytical meditation, and this passage, it's just like lightning coursed through his chest, like the light turned on. A coiled rope's speckled color and coiling are similar to those of a snake, right? So a rope that's rolled up a little bit, speckled color. You saw it in the darkness, kind of looks like a snake. And when the rope is perceived in a dim area, the thought arises, this is a snake. So you're going to kind of be caught. As for the rope, at the time when it is seen to be a snake, right? It's just a rope, but I think it's a snake. The collection and parts of the rope are not even in the slightest way a snake. Therefore, that snake is merely set up by conceptuality, right? I'm not even looking at what I would label a snake, right? I'm just looking at a rope, but my mind sees a snake. If I didn't have the concept of a snake, I wouldn't see a snake, right? There's no way to see a snake. I don't know the concept of a snake, so it's dependent on having a concept of what a snake is for the rope to appear as a snake. It's dependent upon that concept. It was as if lightning, okay, wait, sorry. Therefore, that snake is merely set up by conceptuality in the same way. When the thought I arises in dependence upon mind and body, nothing within mind and body, neither the collection, which is a continuum of earlier and later moments, nor the collection of the parts at one time, nor the separate parts, nor the continuum of any of the separate parts, is even in the slightest way the I. Also, there is not even the slightest something that is a different entity from mind and body that is apprehendable as I. It's not all the collections, and it's not something that is separate from those collections. None of those. Consequently, the I is merely set up by conceptuality, the concept of I, in dependence upon mind and body, right? It's dependent upon a mind and body. It is not established by way of its own entity. Right? So it's not inherently self-existent. It can only exist in dependence upon, right, these parts and mind and body and a concept or construct of I. And that concept, that conceptuality, that's what he's really dialing in on, is dependent upon all of these other attributes, none of which is John's something that arises out of conceptuality, a concept of self, in dependence upon all of these other factors, attributes. Clear, right? Everybody's got that. We'll unpack it more. So we just want to unravel little bits here and go sort of piece by piece. The impact lasted, he's just sharing his experience. The impact lasted for a while. And for the next few weeks, whenever I saw people, they seemed like a magician's illusions in that they appeared to inherently exist. But I knew that they actually did not. He's not saying they don't exist. They don't exist inherently, independently, separately. As a matter of fact, their very existence, if I'm looking at Aaron right now, bunch of tissue, but Aaron pops in my mind. Well, Aaron's a concept in my mind, not a physical being. I have this idea of Aaron, these experiences, interactions of this person labeled Aaron. And anyone who knows Aaron has a very different, they see a very different Aaron, same body. You've been working out? Oh, you look kind of. And so all of you, and those of you that know Aaron or see Aaron, you're going to see Aaron, but Aaron's going to arise in your own mind, your mind, not him, as a concept. dependent upon your experience of him. So he's saying, it's not that he doesn't exist, it doesn't exist inherently. He exists in dependence upon. And then conceptuality is what he's making a point here. So he's saying, this impact lasted, so he sees, His Holiness would see people as like a magician's illusion. But he knew they didn't exist that way. That experience, which was like lightning in my heart, was most likely at a level below completely valid and incontrovertible realization. So His Holiness is not claiming, complete awakening, complete direct insight. But he's cagey about it. That's probably, probably not there. And just for those of you who don't know too much about Tibetan Buddhism, one never reveals, their full awakening. You always, his Dalai Lama, I don't really know much, just a simple monk, So a little cagey here, he's just saying, this is, likely level below complete, valid, incontrovertible realization. This is when my understanding of the cessation of the afflictive emotions as a true possibility became real. So this is the moment in his experience, his direct experience, when the cessation of suffering was not just an intellectual construct anymore. It was real. Like, oh, all of this is built upon misperception. All of this is illusory in nature. All of this is dependently arising. All of this is, conceptual in reliance upon these other causes and conditions. And so he had this moment where, whoa, you can eliminate this. You don't have to misperceive this, which will give rise to all that suffering. Nowadays, I always meditate on emptiness in the morning and bring that experience into the day's activities. So it takes a little time to really bring that clarity and try to maintain it throughout the day. Just thinking or saying, I, as in I will do such and such, will often trigger the feeling, wow, I'll just get that feeling back, that clarity. But still, I cannot claim full understanding of emptiness. So he's just saying, didn't fully get it. Excuse me a moment. I'm just going to pause there for a moment because we're getting into deep water or thin air. I think deep water is better for this analogy. So just making sure that we're getting where he's going to the understanding around concepts, and concepts will only arise in dependence upon experiences and phenomenon and perception. So there needs to be something to perceive, someone perceiving this concept that arises from experience and conditioning. And so if we start to get where he's sharing here, is that whether it's Aaron or whether it's John, or it's His Holiness I'm looking at, none of us exist inherently from our own side, separately, of our own accord. Right? I only exist in dependence upon a body, causes and condition, oxygen, water, nourishment, my parents, giving birth to me, and and these moments of experience that and the food and so forth, all these things that gave rise to a body and a consciousness that was, linked to this body, so mind and body, and this stream of consciousness and awareness that is perceiving this in a particular way. But when I really drill down, I'm going to notice that there's not going to be some solid, non-changing John that's kind of operating this whole thing. John is arising in dependence upon all of this, moment to moment, as a stream of consciousness, not as a solid, unchangeable, immutable being. I'm changing moment to moment. My body's changing moment to moment. My awareness is attending to things moment to moment. My perception's changing moment to moment. My feelings are changing moment to moment. My experience of everything's moment to moment. And I'm always arising in dependence upon the environment, the conditions. All of you are experiencing a different John right now. And all of those Johns exist in dependence upon your experience and your prior knowledge and your conditioning and your experience of yourself, and the fact that we have a computer and internet and this thing's going through a satellite, and the fact that there is a body here that had a birth certificate that said John that's giving this talk. None of which is independent, right? Everything is interdependent, independently arising, only arising in dependence upon. Nothing is solid and self-existent. So that's our entry point here, is understanding this piece that we're starting with understanding what we're talking about is how things exist. They exist in dependence upon. And then concepts arise, and those concepts can only arise in dependence upon. But John, where's John exist? If this body were to die, would I not exist in your mind somewhere? Would I exist as a memory or anything? Would I cease to exist in your mind? I mean, I still have friends that passed away a long time ago. Do they not exist anymore? Do I bring them to mind? They exist now. And can I remember things they shared with me and taught me? Do their teachings continue to exist? Do they influence me in some way? When I think of someone and I have a feeling, whether it's a joy or sadness, and they're not here anymore, do they exist, not exist? And so, well, we're already at 7:30. It's a good place to settle for a moment. And so how we are starting to understand the nature of how things do exist, you might reflect on that's pretty much not how we engage in the world, right? Because we know so-and-so is an idiot, so-and-so is a great person, and I like this, I don't like that, and these things are, like this. But do we ever really see others and people as this sort of illusory thing that's arising in my mind in dependence upon my experiences and how I'm perceiving them in a given moment, the constructs or the labels I'm attaching to them? And probably we don't live that way very often. So how we engage in the world is disconnected from how things actually are. And therein lies the problem. It's incongruent. And so out of that misperception, we keep trying to get things to be the way we like them based on something that's not true. I'm going to just dig in just another moment here, because His Holiness is just going to make this point. If I can click on the button that will get us there. Yep. Share screen. And he's saying a consciousness that conceives of inherent existence, right? Independent existence, does not have a valid foundation. A wise consciousness grounded in reality understands that living beings and other phenomena, minds, bodies, buildings, and so forth, do not inherently exist. This is the wisdom of emptiness, understanding reality exactly opposite to the misconception of inherent existence. Wisdom gradually overcomes ignorance. So this is our work, is to gradually overcome the habitual way of misperceiving ourselves in the world that we live in by starting to pay attention to, analyze, and observe the nature of how things exist in ourselves. And to start doing that as accurately as possible, and it'll start to unwind a little bit. His Holiness, one particular time, it just, lightning came through him. And we can soften that grip of grasping to these misperceptions. And so this becomes this next part of the practice, is to start developing the skills and honing our ability to see this unfolding of the experience more accurately. Understand you are not the person you were when we started this Dharma teaching. All right, well, we're a few minutes over, but I do want to, if anyone has just a question, since we are in deep waters, anyone that would like to ask a question, or being not clear, we're not going to unpack the whole nature of reality. I really want to open the door with this tonight, and have us start noticing, just the dependence of everything that we have, and how concepts appear. I think we got a hand. There we go. Okay. Carla, you can unmic it. Or unmute.
Is there anything you can point out in the meditation we already do in the morning, or maybe a small addition to it that can start sort of unraveling this idea, like what the Dalai Lama said, that he meditates on emptiness every morning, and then he uses that to inform his interactions for the day. Is there something that we're already doing in our meditation that I just don't recognize as that, or is there something we can add to it that we can, because I've been working on this for a while, and I definitely get the sense that it's going to take very persistent effort.
Yeah.
To get an experience.
Right. And so in the last few minutes, I don't want to just try to unpack a meditation on emptiness. And we will unpack that. But one thing I would invite you to do, and I invite everybody this week, just to start noting this this dependence and arising of misperception. Not so much even, we can do a little bit in our meditation, is to, but also in our day, in our activities, in our interactions with others. Whenever we notice, and this is what His Holiness, kind of what we're wrapping up, that's why I think it'd be nice to kind of unfold that, as he gave some analytical tools there right at the end, and we unpacked them a little bit last week. But just to notice, for example, that any ill will or any frustration or any anger or any sort of, harsh mental state that arises, notice how that is dependent upon me perceiving this person in a particular way, in a very real way, that they exist in a particular way, or this event is existing in a particular way. And so I would encourage this week to start to apply what His Holiness talked about right at the end of the last one, noting that if I attend to something else about this person or something else about my experience, I'm going to have a different feeling. So if I notice a friend today in a group was talking about someone who was, kind of hogging the leg press thing in a gym, and they're FaceTiming, and they're kind of waiting for it, and how frustrated and angry, and why don't you do that? And the difference of reflecting on, I don't know if their phone call is someone who is in the hospital or has COVID, and then shifting the attention and then having a very different experience with the same individual. And so I think this is a valuable exercise to start with this week. And then, this one is going to get into some very, precise ways that we can start meditating on this conceptuality and the nature of our experience. But I think that us being aware, especially, it's such a valuable in our interactions with others, as I see in any given moment, I'm caught up and this is terrible, or this is how many times has this terrible gone into, oh, this is pretty good, or this is pretty good, went to this is pretty terrible, or how many fears do I have, and do those fears, play out? So start noticing that the feelings and thoughts and things that arise in my mind are always dependent upon me focusing on something in a particular way. And if I shift what I'm attending to, like His Holiness said, someone start looking at their good qualities, like, if they were helpful, or they kind, or this or that, then it shifts how I see that person. It shifts their label, it shifts my concept. So I think that would be valuable this week. And then, as we get into this, we're going to get more sort of precise instruction in terms of how do we, drill down on this understanding of self.
Thanks. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like real world stuff that'll make me less angry. I'm all for that. Okay. And all right. No, thank you for your comment. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dedicate. I'm going to pop our dedication up. I'm trying to build some continuity between our practice book, our practices, our community, that we have this sort of ongoing thing that we're all doing together, and that they're unified. So let me bring up the dedication that we use in the book, and that'll be our dedication for the incredible amount of merit that we have already accumulated here this evening. Incredible. Spiritual energy, momentum. So let's just take a moment to be in this moment, to reflect on this path of awakening, this rare and precious opportunity we have to engage in this path of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now our dedication. By this merit may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, and I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.